Hey everyone. So today in this video, I'm going to show you something really cool. A production-ready, HIPAA-compliant medical document processor built entirely on AWS serverless architecture. We're talking about a system that can take a medical form, extract all the text, identify medical entities, and structure the data, all in probably under 60 seconds. And the best part, it's fully encrypted, audit logged, and ready for healthcare production use. And the best part, it's fully encrypted, it's audit logged and ready for use in the healthcare industry. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how it works, and then we'll dive into the architecture, the code, and how to make it HIPAA compliant and some of the things you might need to do. So let's get started.
Hey there, I'm Dave, founder of Digital 6 Technologies. I help businesses use AI and the cloud to work smarter, run smoother, and actually make technology feel simple again. Over the years, I've worked with companies of all sizes, helping them automate repetitive tasks, secure their cloud environments, and design intelligent systems that save time and money. That might mean building a custom AI chatbot, setting up voice automation for customer calls, or creating a secure, compliant cloud setup that just works. At Digital 6, we call this intelligence-driven architecture. Because it's not just about using AI, it's about building systems that think and adapt with your business. So if you've been curious about what AI could do for your company, or if you just want to talk through an idea, hit the link in the description and set up a free consultation. Let's explore how we can make AI and automation actually work for you. Thanks.
On the video I did a while back, I did one on N8N, and I did kind of the same thing I'm doing here, but everything was done through N8N. And what I did is I used Postman, send the documents through. At the time, I think I had like 8 documents, sent it through, went through a loop. At that point, I used GPT to analyze the documents, put a lot of prompts in there to order and do that. And then it looped through based on how many documents I sent through. What it did is I had some other nodes that would combine it together. I sent it all to, well, like I said, this wasn't probably was not really HIPAA compliant, but this is a great model that you can use if you're using someone who's scanning documents, or maybe you have a person who does quotes out in the field. They get back, scan, they can send these quotes in, kind of automate that, pull the information that you want out of there, and then of course you can maybe create quotes or something like that in another automation as well. So, but this pretty much shows you everything that kind of what I did. Now what I'm doing is I'm taking this now and I'm going to move it into AWS. So we're going to use all AWS services, Textract, the medical part of it, medical processing, and so on. So now let's move on to the best part, and let's take a look at how this whole thing works.
All right, so now let's go ahead and get started and show you how this whole thing works. So I wrote a real simple Streamlit front end on this deal here. So like I said, I talk about this again, but if I was doing this for a client, I wouldn't use Streamlit, but it's very easy. I do it all the time to test things out before I move it on to something else. So this is kind of what I do. Okay, so on the last one, the video that I did on N8N and medical document scanner, I came up with, I use these documents right here to scan them. And so the idea here is that, you've got a signature on one of these, you've got, here's some different ones. So I tried to come up with, a form that kind of had everything in there as much as possible. So let's go ahead and we'll just maybe I'll just pick this one for right now. We'll put this over here. I'll pick this. So you can kind of see it's Greg Stevens and so on. So we've got that in there, right? So then once I upload in there, it kind of has it over here. Kind of shows you everything that goes in it. And then what we do is then we'll go and process the document. So this is just kind of, I'm going through here now, so you can see right here, it's uploaded. Once it's uploading, then the process started, like I mentioned, or I'll mention here soon, and then here it is right here, and everything's done, right? So now we can go in here, we can kind of see what goes into it. And here's a nice thing about it too, is that you can always set, like if anything's below a certain confidence level, then don't take it, but you can see what it did here. So it has the blue shield, right? It has the information, the confidence, the ID number, and so on. So let's go ahead and take a look at that of what that was, right? So we put that right onto here. We can see anything happen. So here's the data group number right here, GX1533. So did a pretty good job right here. The deal G Stevens at yahoo.com, confidence at 95%. So really did a pretty good job of reading my writing. It seems like nobody else can read my writing, but this can, right? So, and then the phone number 208-867-1586. So it does that pretty well, and kind of took everything out here. So you can see here that did a very good job of kind of taking all this. Let's look at the address here. We got Boise, date of birth is good. 1283 West 83rd Street. Yep, nice job. And pretty much everything above here is 95% or higher. So did a really nice job here of checking that out. And of course, you can also look here at the summary of what the JSON is going to be sent right here. So I set that up so we can go look. This is basically going to be in the S3 bucket, which we're going to look at here in just a second. So anyway, this is kind of how this works. You can, like I said, you can set it up to do multiple. You can upload multiple documents as well. But at least I just want to kind of show how this works. Okay, so here we are in the S3 bucket, and now let's go and take a look. But you can remember what we kind of went through is that we have processed data, we have raw data that if we ever need it, and then we have the logs as well. But what we want to do is we want to go into here and we want to kind of look at the results, right? And so in the results we have a clean, raw, and summary, right? So, and let's just make sure I have this set up. Let's see. Okay, so here we go right here. So let's just look at the summary of what we just scanned. We'll go here to open and we'll check it out here. And here's a nice little summary of this that gives you a nice little deal. This can be used for anything. You can put this, of course, in some sort of table or something like that. In my N8N video, I put it in an Airtable. You can put this into a SQL, a real simple SQL or MySQL database, Aurora or something like that on here. And then if we go back to results, and then we'll go to clean, and show kind of the same information and so on. And there you go, successfully processed. Whoops, did the wrong one again. I got to go back. Sorry. Okay. I did a couple at the same time. I got to look. Let me make sure I got the right. Yep. There we go. And so there you go. So it kind of shows all the information and the confidence levels and everything else. And this is kind of what I took this information and put it on my Streamlit, so you can kind of see what it is. But you can kind of see here the confidence levels and so on. If a confidence level is low, like I said, if it's below a certain 90% or something like that, maybe you don't take the information, maybe you kick it out, or however that works. So anyway, that's all in here, and you can kind of see how this works. If we did multiple forms, that would all be in here as well, and you could see all that. But you can see the processed ones, and then you can also see the other information that we have in there as well. Logs, got your logs in here, which we have. Oh, I'm sorry. The logs I did stop because it was I didn't want to use the information, but you can log all that information as well. But anyway, you can see the processed results. And like I said, I just wanted to do clean just so you can kind of see an idea. The raw, of course, is just like what it means. It's pretty much just raw JSON. Maybe you want more data to take from this, so it's all in there as well. So that takes care of that information right there, and then we'll move on to the next one. Okay, in this video, I just wanted to do a real quick show you the CloudWatch. So I'm in CloudWatch right now, and I have a bunch of them in here, and I just wanted to show the ones that have medical, because that's what I called them all. So, but you can just kind of go in here and you can kind of see what they are, how they all work, and so you can kind of go in here, and this is the classifier. So this is basically just classifying how it is. And is it safe? Is it true? Medical document right here, the type, and so on. And we've seen this already in the JSON files, and that'll be in there, so you'll see that. But this is just basically how this works. If we go back here, the medical entity, we'll kind of look at these. These are all in here as well, and you can kind of see how they all show the information in these as well. And this is, like I said, this is all in our JSON files that we have in here as well, but you can kind of just see everything that it's complete, and then it's ready to move on. Okay, now I want to just show you the CloudFormation that we created. And I tell you, the CloudFormation is just the way to go, because if you're ever doing something simple, you can
set it up in the cloud formation, and then you can go and take it down. So I'll just show you here real quick. Here's the medical doc processor that we put in here. You can see it's set up here. And then we'll go ahead and put that, and you can kind of see everything that went in here, the step functions and so on. But I just kind of want to show you how it goes. Then of course you can always go back in here and then revert back and delete it, which would just take everything out of here. That's a nice thing about this. This is actually, when I get done here, I'll probably do the same thing. That way I don't have to worry about going to all the different locations to delete or remove and so on. This will do it all for you. So anyway, and then also just to show you here, in the code that I sent over. So you can see here, this is what I sent. This is the YAML file right here. And you can kind of see this is where I set up everything. The KMS keys that I have are all in here. And here's what the services that it's going to take care of for that. And then we've got the, okay, what I wanted to go over right now is just kind of how we put this whole thing together and how we started it, right? So I'm going to kind of talk to you about my pre-deployment checklist, how we got things going, and then how I created a cloud formation template and really ran that and got everything started. So, you have your AWS account, and this document will be in my GitHub as well. So you can kind of go through and see everything that needs to be done. But, what I did is, of course, set up these two things right here. And then the AWS CLI is, of course, configured on my deal in the region. And this is, I seem to always do this a lot, and I know a lot of my clients do the same thing, but I set this up in US West because I'm over in the West, so I did a lot. And then when I did this, I didn't specify US West. And so when I created this whole thing, it created in the US East. And so we had problems there when I first ran this thing. Once I figured out what I did wrong, that took some time though, because I was sitting there, didn't figure that one out. But anyway, so we went through here, created the cloud formation template, and then kind of went from here. So, and you can see this is kind of the structure of the GitHub, kind of tells you everything ready to go. And really, basically what I did is I did the option 1, automated deployment. And so I just put it in the PowerShell. I deployed this, and then we're off and running. And basically what it did is it deployed the cloud formation, which I'll show you here in a second. And then it creates all the resources, deploys the Lambda function codes. It generated the env configuration file while we're doing that, and then of course it displays everything. You can do it manually as well, and this kind of what I do is I kind of walk through everything that it does, and then of course it's telling you everything it's setting up. It's the S3 buckets, the DynamoDBs, the 4 Lambda functions right here. You can see that we're going to use Rekognition, Textract, and the comprehend medical. So that's all in there. And kind of go through the IAM roles that I set up here. You have to also give Lambda function execution roles as well, which it did, the step functions, be able to access, do what they need to do. And then, of course, I even put in some of the costs in here. And we've talked about all this before, but you can kind of see here how it works. And then, the dependencies if you want to do it manually. And then once it's done, I put another document in here as well. You can see this is a deployment success. And it kind of tells you once it's done, this kind of tells you everything that's in there. So you can kind of see it as well. Okay, so what I'm going to go over here is the architecture part of it. And the architecture part is really how I started. And this is kind of how I do everything now with me, especially being a solutions architect. This is how I begin all my projects. And a lot of times what I like to do is I like to maybe even bring up Claude or Amazon Q to kind of help with the whole architecting and services and how I want to put things together. So once I do that, then I start going into the coding and the Python coding for the Lambda functions and so on. But this is kind of how I started. And I'll show you walk you through the whole thing. This, of course, is not a pretty diagram, but at least you'll get the idea. So from what I showed you, you can see here that I use Streamlit, right? And of course, you wouldn't want to use Streamlit. I wouldn't if I was doing this for production, but Streamlit's so easy to set up and get things going, like I mentioned already. And, so we upload the documents, and then we can monitor the processing, make sure that went up there successfully. Of course, there's code in there, which shows if there's any kind of a error, anything like that. And then we use, the Bodo 3 SDK to kind of send the information up. It's secure, so we don't handle any kind of HIPAA compliance there. It's all secure. So this is how you would set that up. And then, of course, then it goes into the AWS cloud. And what we do is we send this into an encrypted S3 bucket. And, we're using KMS, which I talk about as well. And then, the versioning is enabled. and then of course it triggers a step function. So this is a nice thing about this. A lot of times maybe people will set up a cron job or something like this, but we're going to use the AWS services. So once a document is put in the S3 bucket, it actually triggers something to do next. And what we're going to do is we're going to trigger, the next step will be able to trigger what we want to do next. And that's where we'll actually trigger and send these into the Lambda function. So we're going to classify the document, check for it, see if it's safe, extract the text, recognize any medical entities, which I'll go into, and then we finish up with the persist data. So the first one, which I have here, sorry, this is on kind of on two different pages here, but you have the Lambda. The first Lambda is going to kind of check it out and see what it's doing. And then the second one then extracts the text. So we're going to use text extract from there. So you got the Rekognition, text extract, and then we're going to use the AWS medical deal that recognizes any kind of information that's in there. And then after that, the information, so it's passed over from 1 to 2 to 3, and then after that, then we go to the data persistence Lambda function, which then takes the information and we'll put it back into S3 with the information that's in there. And then we also have a DynamoDB table that has the document ID, the metadata, and the S3 path, and so on. So that's where it all goes into. And then we have the KMS encryption key that, of course, makes sure everything's encrypted and then it's HIPAA compliant. So just going through the process flow then is that you can see here that, we do the document upload. Lambda 1 is the classification. Really what it's doing is it's using the AWS Rekognition. And of course it detects, make sure there's, safety check, make sure there's anything in there. Heck, you could maybe not have this in there if you didn't want it, but we just went ahead and added it in there. It's text labels, document types, PDFs, and so on. Or if it's a JPEG, what kind of document it is. And then of course we tag it with the metadata. And then of course from there, we send out the document ID, document type, and is it safe? Any kind of labels are in there. And then we send that to the Lambda 2. So you can see here, the Lambda 2 then is the information is coming from step 1. And then now we're starting to use the text extract, which is going to take that information. We're going to analyze the document, and then checking the forms, tables, and layouts. And here's what we once we do all that information, we're parsing it, kind of taking it apart, and everything else. We have the prescription lab, insurance, and all that kind of information that's in there. And then from there, we have the output, which is the lines, the form fields, everything that is taken from that document. And then from there, we send it to the next Lambda function, which of course is the one that has the medical entity recognition, right? Which is their tool. And to keep in mind, and I just want to go into this real quick, is that, in the N8N process that we did, it was pretty much 100% ChatGPT, right? This is pretty important, right? And I like to look at AI as subjective, right? So most of the time it's going to get it right, but it may not all the time. And if you go back to my N8N video, you can see it. I did have some problems. I really had to do some serious fine tuning in the prompts to get exactly what I wanted. But if I ever made any other changes or anything like that, then I have to go back and change the prompt. Where this is using machine learning language that is done, that's trained on medical documents, used OCR. Like I tried, if I go back to the N8N video, I used OCR to do this in the beginning, and I just had a hard time. It was an open source OCR. But now we're using the OCR kind of what an AWS service, which is trained, and then it also will give you the percentage of how confident it is in what it's scanning, so you can actually adjust. If it's anything over 90%, keep it. If it's under 90% or under 80%, then don't keep it. So on. But now you're using information that's actually has been trained on just that information, whereas before I was using the chat GPT that's been trained, of course, on everything, right? So this is the key thing here. And then we're using the medical entity recognition here that's actually, trained on this information. So now you can start pulling information out of here that it can check the health information. It can look for anything that's in here, medication codes, which I think I put some in my documents here and we'll show in here. But and then, so you get this information that's already trained on that. Just same thing with the recognition up here. Right? This has all been trained on how to take information, the OCR part of it. And then once you do that, then it kind of takes that data and then it puts it back. And I showed you guys all that on how this works. You can see the different kinds, but it is in the metadata, everything's in here. And then the output's the document ID status. And of course, we send it to different information. But, with this now, like I said, I have that, the 8-page documentation I set up in N8N, and it was trained just on that information. But if I changed it, right? So Now with this, I can do medical prescriptions. I can do lab reports. You can do insurance cards. You can do medical forms. You can do clinical notes, right? A doctor writes notes, and then you could scan it and send it through and then go through here, or radiology reports, right? So it's kind of endless what you can do here now, because AWS with the medical scanning and everything else will know exactly what it's doing. And then from there, it can extract the data and give you what you need. So now what we're going to look at is the step function. So this is pretty much kind of the I guess everything that kind of puts it together with the flow. So what we'll do is we'll go up here to the search. We'll go to the step, we'll look right here in the step functions that we've set up. And so what we'll do then is we'll go here, and I've got the medical doc processor workflow set up right here. And this, of course, was set up in the CloudFormation template. So we can kind of click on this, and then we'll kind of take a look. And let's just go ahead and we'll go here like to the definition, right? So the definition is this is kind of a neat process, really. This is the way to go, with using EventBridge and step flows. This is if you're using cron jobs or whatever, this is definitely a better way to go. And so I'm going to move me over here. And so what we'll have here is that we have the start, and I'll show you how this gets started. But once it gets started right here, then what it does is it actually starts going through, and what it does is it carries the information through there, right? So it takes the information from here, it checks, remember this is to classify, is it true, is it safe, and everything else. Once it's safe, check safety, right? Once it does that, then it takes that information and then it goes to the next one, right? So it checks the safety. Yes, if it's good to go. If it's not, it rejects it. And then it goes to the where it extracts the text from the document right here. And you can see right here where it goes from here. And then once it does that, then it sends the step function will send that information from here and then go to here. And then where checks the medical entities, and then it cleans up the data and then sends it to the S3 buckets. And you can see how all this stuff works right here. So this is a pretty good way of looking at the whole flow of how this whole thing works, right? So, and then let's just go ahead and take a look at the, so let's just look at, so I have a Streamlit, and I showed you guys this at the very beginning, but this is basically how it all works. And so if we go, let's see here. So here it is. This is the start processing, right? And so this is where it goes to right here, and it calls the step function ARN, right? And so the step function ARN then would be back, if we go back into that part of it, we can look right here into, let's go back into here. See, right, this is the ARN that it's calling right here, and I have this in my env file, right? So that's why it's in here. I'm not going to show you my env file because I got other stuff in there, but this is what's in here in the env file. So then when it goes and asks for this, up here, you can see where let me just go back up here real quick, where it pulls that in. You can see right here, step functions area, and this is where it is in my deal. So, and you can see here, while we're looking at this, this kind of shows you everything in here. I screwed up in the region. I set up some stuff in US West, and then when I did this whole CloudFormation template, I forgot to change it to US West, and so I did it in East. So that was a problem when I started. It took me a while to figure out what was going on. I was getting a lot of errors. Then I finally figured that out. But you can see here, this is all set up here, but this is what it calls for. Okay, so what we'll do, let's just show you how this works. So we got the function. I showed you the function here at right around here, right? So this is the function that we start to start the functions. And then what we do is the start button is down, let's see. Yeah, it's right around here. So this is where you kind of upload it all in here. And then they click the button to start it. And then once it's started right here, boom, then it starts it going. So, and that's when it goes ahead and then starts calling. Once this is done, multiple, whether it's one image. So if it goes one image, then it's going to go back up into the next spot, which I think is, where do we have that at? Let's take a look. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you from right here. So what we have here is we have and this will be in my GitHub, so you can see I try to put everything in here. This and the questions that are asked. But so once it goes here, the file is uploaded to S3, and in the app it says it uploads. So what we do is we want to upload the file, and then once it's set, once it's up there, accordingly, then of course, then what it'll do is that then it goes to the next part, which is to start processing, right? And so that's kind of where that would go from there. And then of course, then it starts all the functions. So you can see here, Streamlit, and so you can see the Streamlit calls all that. And let's go ahead and take a look at some more of the code in here to see where all this goes. So what we do now is we have, and so once again, I just want to be clear that we could put an event bridge in this. So like if a S3 receives a file, we can have the event bridge go ahead and start this whole process. But instead we have it started here, like I showed you in 140. And then what we do is then after that, we go up to the part where we start. So once the S3 is in there and it's been uploaded successfully, then what we'll start doing is then we'll start to process everything from here. So as you can see right here, if it's success right here, and then it uploads the S3 bucket right in this section right here. And then right here, this function right here, then if it's a single document, then we go ahead and start the success. And here's the execution of the step function right here. So this is kind of how this all works. And we have all that information. And then I do another one for multiple. If we have multiple scans, does the same thing. It'll go through all the information here for multiple documents. And then after the multiple documents right here, then after does the same thing, but then it'll just do one at a time and process that and then check it. So that's kind of how this whole system works. So anyway, this is just a good way of showing you how the step function works and how I just wanted to show you how the Python, my Streamlit. Now, of course, I wouldn't use Streamlit if I was doing a front end. I use Streamlit all the time, just if I want to whip up something real quick on my PC. But you probably want to use something a little bit more stable, robust for somebody, Laravel or something like that, or whatever you like to use for front ends, and then do that. And then you can call it. Now, once again, you call it that way, or you have it trigger the step function to work, or you can use an event bridge to do the same thing. Okay, so that's it on this section right here. We'll kind of go down here. We got the setup for the buckets, the S3 buckets that we set up. We set up a few of them, which I talk about in the rest of this video. We got the DynamoDB, which is kind of really just takes care of the meta information. And then you got your Lambdas, IAM roles for the Lambda functions, right? So what they can use and what their capabilities are for accessing the S3 buckets, DynamoDB, and so on, right? You can see here. And then we got one for the step functions, which I talk about as well. Here's the IAM role for the step functions, giving it everything. And this is basically so it can get the Lambda functions and get those things, get them started. And then you've got your different Lambda functions and their roles, and the recognizer, and then more step functions for the deal. So you can go through here and look at all these deals. I just wanted to kind of show you all the different deals that what we get going, and how it's just a really simple, easy process to get everything set up once you're ready to go. Okay, and so what I want to show you here is just part of the security part of it. So this is kind of the AWS, and so this just kind of shows you everything here. And so you can see where certain information is from. Here's the medical key that I did. And of course, like I said, after this video, I'm going to remove all this stuff. So you don't have to worry about that, take the information. But you can see here what it's used for, allow services for this key. You got the Lambda, the DynamoDB, and then the Comprehend Medical, which is what we use because, the Comprehend may be taking, personal health information, PHI, out of that. So that's why we have to use this as well. And then, of course, we encrypt the data in Amazon S3. And, of course, the Textract, the data that takes out of there, is encrypted as well. So this is kind of how this all works. We put this in here. And then the next security part of it, I just want to show you that, at the beginning, I set this up. I set up a user and how I made this work. And then so this is kind of what it did from here. So I used the, I called it a medical doc developer right here. And so basically what I did is I gave it administration access. This is a big time no-no, but that's kind of what I did to get this started. And of course I created access keys for it as well and gave that information to it to get it started. But of course you would want to, bolt this down to, the least amount of privileges that are needed. And, Anyway, but I did have to start that, and that's how I started it, and that's how I was able to do the cloud formation and everything else by doing it this way. So anyway, I just wanted to show you those two things. Okay, this is kind of a side note. I kind of wanted to show you just how I put this whole project together. So a while back, I would say a few months ago, I was putting this project together, and I was using Claude to kind of help out with my architecting, and then I also had it figured out how I wanted it to work. So I was building the Lambda functions, and I was having Claude help me with the Python code, because I know quite a bit of Python, but I always like to use Claude to help out with that. So I was putting together some Lambda functions, and then I was running them, and they weren't really working correctly. And then I wanted to, sometimes I would go back to like maybe a more simpler kind of Lambda structure, and I was doing that. And then so before you know it, I had 4 or 5 different Lambda functions working in my at that time I was using VS Code for that. And then when I went back to VS Code a month later, because I picked up a project, and then I didn't really I couldn't remember which one was which, and it was taking me a while to figure it out. And I said, you know what, the heck with it. So what I did is I had Claude kind of come up with, I said, hey, summarize the whole entire project that I want, the diagram, what I want to have done. I even put some snippets of some code in there and everything else. And then I put this document, I gave it to, I think this is Kiro, K-I-R-O. Is it Kiro? This is kind of like AWS's thing. And so it kind of has Amazon Q built into it, which of course you can put in Cursor or anything else, which is fine. But so I decided to try it on that. So I put the document in here, just one document, put it in there. And then I said, here's what I want to build to help me build it and create. That time I really wanted to kind of build some cloud formation templates, to make this work. And so I said, help me do that. And sure enough, it just built this whole entire thing right here, which was pretty cool. And of course, if you use Cursor or even VS Code, you can kind of get the same thing. But I was pretty impressed with Kiro. It's the first time I've used it, and it helped me put things together. Cairo, and we struggled with some of the Lambda functions there for a while. It wasn't kind of given the data that we needed, just like you would with any other kind of AI. But eventually we got it going. And then once we got it going, then you can see here, I came up with all these markdowns of the deployment success, HIPAA verification, this kind of, these documents that I just shared with you, I kind of had it help out. And then I even asked, I said, hey, I'm coming up with a video, help me kind of put together a video process, and I know there's a lot of videos out there to show how people are using Cursor and everything else as their knowledge base and asking questions, which is what, kind of what I did here. But anyway, I just wanted to kind of show you, this is kind of how I put it all together. So instead of kind of going through and doing just the Lambda functions, I just kind of put in here what I wanted, and it built everything up, and then did the cloud formation. And then really what I ran is just this deploy, and I hit deploy, boom, and it connected the AWS. It ran everything. I think all I really did is set up the account, and I set up the IAM user and gave it certain permissions that, to make it HIPAA compliant. And that was it. And then this whole thing just ran after I ran deploy. I did everything. Then of course, I uploaded some documents running the Streamlit. And then of course, like I said, we had some issues with some of the Lambda functions, but after about an hour, I would say, complete, we kind of had this thing all going and ready to go. And then of course, I've gone back and forth several times. We try different documents, several documents, batch documents, PDFs, and so on. And but everything I ran out of here. And so I have to say I'm pretty impressed. And so right now, just so you know, I'm using this now for other projects, and of course I use Claude as well. And then usually I do a check with using the cloud, the Qwen 3 coder, which I use Web UI on my PC here, and then I'll run code through that too. So usually I have those 3 running. I like having them go back and forth to see which one's better. And sometimes I question something. I'll say, wait a minute, is this correct? Because if we're not doing this or that, and then so it works out pretty well. So those kind of like my three go-tos for this kind of stuff. And right now it's been working out pretty well. But anyway, I like this Cairo, whatever you want to call it. I think this is going to be my go-to tool for at least for now. Who knows what's going to happen later. Okay, so now let's go over the exciting part of the security and HIPAA compliance. So once again, I just kind of came up with this boring little document here, but this will be in my GitHub repo as well, so you can kind of go through it. But I just want to show you exactly, what we had to do and what kind of makes it HIPAA compliant. Now, what I would just say, if you're going to use this, make sure you have somebody that's working for your company or somebody that's going to look at this and make sure that it is HIPAA compliant. Don't just go by what I'm saying here. There's also ways you can actually enable certain settings or get certain, tools, SaaS tools, cloud SaaS tools that can actually go in here and check to make sure everything's HIPAA compliant as well. And that way you're monitoring it all the time. Of course, there's plenty of tools in AWS that you can do the same thing. So, but anyway, so let's just kind of go through here. So of course, I talked about the encryption at rest. That was the big thing here. We got that all done with the S3 buckets and the DynamoDB using the KMS encryption. And then of course, the encryption is in transit, right? So since I'm using, from the Streamlit, I'm using the information over encryption. When I send the data up or send the document up, it is we take care of that as well. And then the access controls. What I did is I created an IAM role for this, but what you'd want to do is kind of go in there and make sure this is least privilege, right? So when I set this up, the only privilege that this person has is just really to check this information. So you want to make sure that you have the right access controls for the people that are going to be using this. And then of course the audit logging, which I have in here, and I show in there. 4 is that you have the CloudWatch logs that we have, of course, going. And then, of course, you have the PHI detection, right? So using that comprehend medical service that we talked about, identifies and can flag any PHI information. So you can actually remove any kind of information that you do not want to have. And then let's look at the, of course, this is kind of common sense, this is kind of by default anyway, but you have no public access to the data storage, right? So we have that marked off as well. And if we move on, let's look at the administrative safeguards. We have the access management, once again, role-based controls. So we have that. We have the audit trails in there, immutable logs with the cloud trail and so on. Data retention, which we have in there, and that's already set up. And then, of course, you have incident response. That means, so if you have CloudWatch monitoring and alerting, it'll let you know, right? Once again, you can also have, some sort of SaaS cloud monitoring tool in there as well, if you want, that'll help you out. Of course, physical safeguards. A lot of people ask, AWS kind of takes care of the infrastructure and the HIPAA compliant part of the data center. Network security, you have your VPCs. It's all isolated. There's nothing in the public that you have to worry about. And then, of course, you get once again, the data security from the deal. Now, the reason why at the very beginning I said it's almost HIPAA compliant, and we're not, because there's a business associate agreement that you have to sign, a BAA, which I haven't done, and it's required. You must do that in there, and here it is right here. You can see it here in AWS where you would actually go in and sign that. So you just kind of go in there and sign that there. So you want to go in there and do that. How you do that is you want to go in there and contact AWS or use their AWS artifact, which I'll show you here in just a minute. And then you can, if you have information here, which I'll have in the document too, you can kind of go here. But here is this is all on the HIPAA compliance. And then you can see here's information about the BAA form and so on, and how it all works. So you can kind of go in here. Like I said, I'll have this link in there so you can kind of see how that works, but there's some pretty good information in there for that as well. Okay, and then of course the services that we use, they're all HIPAA eligible, so they all work. We have the S3, the DynamoDB, the Lambdas, the Textract, of course the comprehend, the Rekognition, they all fall in that area. And then the Step Functions, KMS, and of course the CloudWatch. These are all good to go on the HIPAA part. And then the proper configuration, which I've kind of gone into already, but let's just kind of go through it. Once again, the encryption must be enabled, which we've done. Access logging must be configured. So we have that done with the CloudWatch and the CloudTrail. Network security, it's a VPC that is private. And then, of course, the data retention, which we have in there as well. And then organizational requirements. So just because we have this set up in the cloud and it's HIPAA compliant in the cloud doesn't mean that you're done being HIPAA compliant. Of course, you got to have your training. You have to have policy and procedures. Those all have to be set up, your risk assessment. And you have to do this kind of on a regular basis. And then your incident response, which basically means like if CloudWatch gives you an alert, what are you going to do? Who are you going to contact? What are the steps? People in your company? If you're using an outside source like a SOC or something like that, how are you going to take care of that? And then of course, I'll kind of skim through this stuff. You can go in this document, you can look at this more, but basically what you get is you get a full compliant, has all the security controls, PHI handling. So if you want stuff that removed or looked at, whatever, you can kind of do that. And once again, you have to add these in here as well. So that's about it. In this document, like I said, you can kind of go in here and go through this yourself. It'll be in my GitHub repo. And here's the, I put the information of where you can kind of get all this information, and then kind of go from there. Okay, what I want to do here real quick is I wanted to show in this little section right here is the BAA, the artifact. So where you'd find that is you go into AWS artifacts. You can also go in here and just type it in here as well. You can just go to artifacts. Just put that. So AWS artifacts will go here. We'll click on that. And then what you can do is you can go in here to agreements, and then you can actually just go in here and just type in BAA right here. And then you can see, and you just click on this right here, and then you accept the agreement. And that's what you have to have in order to be HIPAA compliant. Okay, before I end this video, I just want to kind of make it kind of go over everything we just went through and kind of summarize and just kind of let you know, kind of emphasize some of the big talking points here on this project here. So the biggest thing is that this is like project ready. This is ready to go. There's really, I mean, it's HIPAA compliant. It meets everything. There's nothing you have to do. This can be used for any kind of company, enterprise, whatever it may be. It is ready to go. So this isn't kind of like a toy project. It is ready. But as I've said this before, I want to make sure that when you take my repo that I'll share with you is check it out yourself. I mean, even when I built this project, I talked about how I did this a few months ago. One of the things I also found is that there was updates to the Python code in Lambda. I think I was using 3.11 at the time. I upgraded to 3.12. There were some other changes, so you know how it is. Everything changes. So you always want to make sure that you're checking everything out to make sure that it's ready to go. So don't just take my repo and take it, review it, check the Lambda codes, make sure everything's working right. I bet there could be some of the SDKs changed with some of the services that AWS has, so make sure you do that as well. And like I said, this meets the HIPAA compliance other than the few things that I shared with you in that HIPAA section. It's ready to go. The BA needs to be signed and so on. It's ready to go. This can be used for anything. So you could build this for this kind of documentation. Maybe you build another one for something else. It's repeatable and it's version controlled, so you're good to go. The nice thing about this, and of course what AWS likes as well, is that this whole thing is serverless, right? There's no EC2s in this or anything like that. No servers to manage. It's auto scaling, so it can go up or down, whatever it may be, and you're only paying for what you use, and that's it. And of course, it's AI powered, so it uses AWS's advanced AI services. Textract, like I said, everything's trained on this kind of information, so it's good to go. And then it can be used for different audiences, different needs, depending on what that is, which is what I really like. And the other part is that the big technical part of the technical highlights of this is that it's a multi failback, right? So with the PDF processing strategies, or if there's any issues, the DynamoDB conversions, which was we talked about that problem in there. The KMS encryption throughout was in there. Structured logging, that we need to have to meet the HIPAA compliance with the CloudTrail, the CloudWash, and so on. And of course, the document type. So you can put any kind of documents. I just found that it seems like everybody who scans something. Okay, well, that's it. I hope you liked the video. We built a complete medical document processing pipeline using AWS, the Lambda functions, Textract, Rekognition, and other HIPAA medical services. We've made it, like I've talked about, we made it completely HIPAA compliant with encryption, access controls, audit logging. We've also created a triple format output that you've seen with different JSON outputs. And all the documentation is going to be in my GitHub, which you'll be able to look at and view. Like I said, feel free to comment or do whatever. Like I said, also make sure that you kind of go through it yourself. Don't just kind of run with what I've got. And remember, if you're going to process real patient data, don't forget to sign the AWS BEA that I mentioned as well. And that should pretty much cover, and that'll make it really 100% accurate. But like I said, make sure that you have somebody who's HIPAA, a consultant or whatever, or somebody in your company, and make sure you have the right tools to check all that. You'll be good to go. So anyway, thanks for watching. I'm looking forward to your comments either in the video. Make sure you like it as well. And then also leave any comments in my repo as well. Thanks.